everyone, and hopefully we are live. I'm having some weird technical difficulties. I can say that it seems that my neighbors' um, landscapers are pretty punctual. They seem to start about the same time that I do this video each week, which means that my dogs typically go crazy whenever they see them. So if you hear barking craziness, that's what it is. We actually have my daughter's dog home as well. So now we have three instead of just the normal two that we have. But today I wanted to just kind of talk about the big news, which is Texas's partial reopen. We've decided in Texas that we're going to partially reopen certain industries, and I guess we're kind of testing to see how things will go. So the governor has allowed restaurants, movie theaters, retail establishments, malls. They can all open as long as they don't fill to more than 25% of their capacity. Of course, that raises questions for me of who's going to monitor. How are the restaurants really going to know, 25% of occupancy? Actually, the restaurants can probably know a little bit easier than malls. That was my biggest question. Um, so, with that being said, we still need to be taking our own precautions whenever we go and visit these establishments. I think one of my biggest fears for everyone is we're just going to get really lax on uh, taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're still wearing our masks when we go out, our gloves, and we're still taking the same precautions even though we're starting to open up these establishments. So I just want to kind of remind everybody, and if you see me looking over here, it's because I have a screen over here with some information on it. But the symptoms of COVID, fever, chills, repeated shaking with chills, muscle pain, headache, sore throat. Um, One I have not heard a whole lot of was new loss of taste or smell. So just watch yourself, make sure that if you have any of these symptoms that you go and get tested and you get your medical help as soon as possible, um, before it gets into some of the dangerous symptoms that come with this virus, such as trouble breathing, persistent pain or pressure in the chest, uh, new confusion or inability to, I guess, just be conscious almost, bluish lips or face. So basically, it's anything that's robbing your body of oxygen. You really want to make sure that you're being careful with that. Um, Galveston beaches are completely open. I have not seen any restrictions. They had some opening, but they were very restricted on what you could do on the beaches. The suggestion is still that we social distance. So wearing your mask, wearing your gloves, staying away from individuals that aren't a member of your household, keeping your 6 foot distance. And there's some pretty funny memes out there with people with a big rubber donut around them that's 6 feet, keeping people away. So there's a little bit of humor, but it's also something that we should be really watching. So I've been watching the trends on the positive case growth, and it's interesting when you look at the graphs. They tend to make U shapes. So we have a spike, then it goes down, then we have a spike, and I think that's probably what we're going to see with this partial reopening. Matter of fact, we had a low day, April 13th. There was only 83 new cases in the Houston area, and on the 29th, we had 228. So we have these low days and high days. The cumulative trend obviously is increasing each day, but there hasn't been a steady downward trend when you're looking at the overall daily rates of the COVID. So with people coming into more and more contact with each other, I think we're going to start seeing that graph take an upward trend again. And it's just really needs to be stressed that everybody still needs to maintain the same protocols and the same, I guess, fear of this virus that they've been exhibiting. just so that they have the same cautions that they've been having to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and not exposing yourself unnecessarily. Um, there's also a lot of information from the Texas Medical Center on hospitalizations, and it's following the same curve as the daily curve. April 19th, we had 32 hospitalizations compared to just a couple of days ago, we had 57. So the president, when he put out his guidelines, wanted to have a typical downward trend before we started reopening. And that's not necessarily what we're seeing in Texas. In Texas, we seem to be going more by a date deadline. But I would not be surprised if we don't have some of these restrictions coming back, if people aren't taking the precautions that they need to take. Now, as an employer with employees, you need to be very, very cautious. I would say that you need to make sure that you know if your employees are high risk or not. If you have high risk employees, allow them to continue working from home or doing what they were doing to protect themselves. I think you're going to open yourself up to some liability if you force them to come back to work in a facility and they get sick. So just be very, very cautious as an employee or with your employees that you're taking the precautions that you need to. Also, you need to make sure that you're following all the CDC guidelines in cleaning your spaces, keeping your spaces closed that are typical areas where employees gather. You don't want large gatherings of people. You want to keep people need to be able to maintain that 6-foot distance at the workplace. So I would just caution everyone to make sure that you are keeping things clean, that you're allowing those employees that really need to be contained at home, that you're allowing them to stay at home. And especially, I think, over the last month, we've all learned to really start using our tools and our digital things that we're able to do. And we're finding out it's not quite as hard. Although I personally am missing the personal interactions and then looking forward to getting back to that. I also want to make sure that I'm being safe and taking care of myself. So I would also just put out there, courts are still not going to have in-person hearings until at least June 1st. So the status of the courts is going to remain as it is now through May. And then it's going to be reevaluated at that time to see where we are. For all of the attorneys that were wanting to go to the State Bar annual meeting, it has been canceled. So we're not going to have that. There's some free resources for attorneys out there to make sure you go to the State Bar website and look at those. The new lawyer induction ceremony, sorry guys, just passed the bar, that's going to be canceled. Good news is July bar exam is going to be issued as scheduled as of right now, and they're going to add a second one in September. So typically we have, just February and July that we could take that bar exam, and now they're going to add another one, it sounds like. So that's the status of things for lawyers. I would still strongly recommend, if you have any court cases that you're thinking that you have to sit on and wait to file, you don't. The district clerks are still taking filings. They're still processing cases. We still have processor servers going out and serving. We're able to notarize documents online right now without having to have special certifications and credentials. So there's not really anything that's going to make you have to wait until all the restrictions are lifted to do this. Matter of fact, I think there's going to be a run on the courts for filings when everything completely reopens. And it's going to be a nightmare backing up the courts and everything else. So that's really all I had to say today. I just wanted to really stress everybody be careful. Don't become lax in what you've been doing over the last month and a half to keep yourself safe. Just because we're starting to reopen things does not mean that the virus is gone. It's still there. Um, People should live their lives and enjoy their lives, but still keep the same precaution that you've been using. Let's don't see any questions or anything else, but thank you for joining me. And I'm actually surprised that my dog stayed quiet the whole time, so I'm gonna have to go give them some treats. And we will talk to you next week about property division. Take care.